One of the problems is they forget who elected them. They forget who supported them, who encouraged people to vote for them. So we got to hold people accountable. They become these people, judges, elected officials become part of the status quo, thereby becoming part of the problem.
Don't give up the fight. Preacher man, don't tell me.
Good evening once again. This is the second hour. Get up, stand up. We're on the new WHPR. We refer to it as the greatest station in the nation. Where would we be without TV 33, Watkins Broadcasting? And speaking of RJ Watkins, we want to send prayers out to our vice president here, Henry Tyler. Some prayers out to him and his family. We know that the Almighty is still in the healing business. He heals bodies, he heals minds, and he heals hearts. And speaking of that, Mr. Mayor, what was that? The overpass, the bridge today in Miami collapsed, and people are dead, people are injured, people are confused. We send out special prayers to everyone down there in Miami and what they're dealing with, and everyone anywhere. Callers, I apologize. You know how long-winded I can be. Please call right back, and we will get you up expeditiously to speak with your mayor. He wants to talk to you. 313-868-0351, 313-868-0351, 313-868-0342, 313-868-0342, and 313-868-4336, 313-868-4336. Mr. Mayor, speaking of crime, the police are hiring.
They are.
Police, EMS, fire. The city, we're open for business. We're hiring.
Oh, we've been hiring 30 police officers a month for the last 2 years, and we're going to be continuing to hire 30 a month for the next year. City Council just adopted the budget that starts in July for another 140 positions in the police department. We have 150 officers in the academy today. It's a 6-month academy class, so basically every month we graduate approximately 30 more officers. So as folks have noticed, our police department is getting younger, but these young officers have performed extraordinarily well in several high-profile incidents, and I'm really proud of the training, and we're going to keep hiring. But as a couple of your callers have pointed out, without the support of the community, there's a limit to what the police can accomplish.
Well, that's the whole thing, Mayor. It has to be the law enforcement, the churches, the fraternities, the politicians, the community groups. We all have to work together. Otherwise, this thing absolutely does not work. It's like itching about what's going on, but November, you don't show up. Now, the former Congressman Conyers made it with the motor voter bill where anyone can register anybody to vote. And if you see us out in the street, y'all, 99% of the time in one of our cars, we've got some forms. If you're not registered, it's okay to tell us, I'd like to get registered right here and there. But my point is, Mayor, we've all got skin in this game.
Right. And in 2018, we have a decision to be made at the state level. You've got the most right-wing candidates for governor that I have seen in my lifetime. You have 660,000 people in the state who have health care from Obamacare through the Medicaid expansion, and the leading candidate on the Republican side has said he's going to repeal it. And I was at DMC where we saw patients who showed up with stage 4 cancer, and there's nothing that you can do for them, where had they had health care and been in earlier, could have been treated very readily. We had people who lost their eyesight from glaucoma because they weren't treated. You're talking about taking that health care away from 100,000 Detroiters, 600,000 people statewide. And the fact of the matter is, if those who feel like they're forgotten stay home, they will be forgotten.
You right about that.
By the next administration. And so we got to get folks registered, and we got to get folks out to vote.
And we have congressional races. We
Right.
got state reps and the whole gambit.
Right.
So it's a very important election year for Detroit, for Wayne County, for the state of Michigan. And if you read any kind of newspaper or anything nationally, the mayor's here, so, I'm not going to discuss POTUS. We got to get money from Washington, D.C., but y'all overstand. I mean, look, just like that, it's like a time warp. Where did we go backwards 40 years or something? What happened? We've got to vote. And again, if you're not registered, if you see any of our members in the street, any of the people with the badges, tell them, hey, could you register me, please? We will register you. We will turn it into the clerk for you. And in about 2 weeks, you'll be qualified to vote. Good evening, caller. You're speaking with the Honorable Mike Duggan, Mayor of Detroit.
Good evening. I would just like to recommend that when it comes down to the voting situation, allow the tables to come into the supermarkets to register people. Allow people to have direct access when they are going to pay their bills at DTE or anywhere else that they can pay a bill. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you so much for taking my call.
That's a really interesting idea. During the last presidential campaign, I stood out in front of shopping centers out at Belmont and some other places registering people to vote, but we did that on weekends. I wonder if there's any reason we couldn't get some folks who work at some of these stores to be officially deputy registrars and offer that on a daily basis. That's a great idea. I'm going to go look into that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
also would like to say, as far as littering our polls, 6 Mile, going all the way down to probably past Southfield to Evergreen, these polls that people are using in our neighborhoods are littered with, I want to buy your house, stop foreclosure, and everything else. This, for each sign that the police go by, they need to take the number because they have to see it. Like we do.
You're right, and
Okay, they have to see it.
I'm gonna step that up. We've had people put these bumper stickers on poles, buy a car for $300, and our prosecutors call up and say, call the numbers, and say, we're going to prosecute your organization for littering. I didn't appreciate that you're getting a lot of it at 6 and Evergreen, which tells me I haven't been out that way recently, but I'm going to go take a look, and we'll get on top of that.
Come to 6 and Schaefer,
6 and
where the
Schaefer.
restaurants are.
6 and
Anywhere
Schaefer.
there's a near a restaurant, 6 and Schaefer is filled.
6 and Schaefer
And
and
you're
6
saying
and Evergreen.
you're saying the telephone
Wow.
poles at the intersection?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna go take a
Anywhere
look.
you find a dollar store, you can find litter. Anywhere you can find Home Depot or across from that, you will find litter. Coming into the neighborhoods, you will find that the poles are littered. Going down Greenfield between 8 Mile and going back towards like Plymouth, you will find the poles littered up.
All right, so we're going to go look at that. Normally, the worst of it is right at the freeway exits is where the poles are, and they've been enforced very, very intensely. But I'm going to go check out the 6 and Schaefer area.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Please.
And call back next month when the mayor is here and let us know, has it gotten any better?
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
They're coming into the neighborhoods, literally.
Yes, ma'am.
They're coming into the streets, down into the streets, and putting their signs up.
We're going to get on top of it.
Thank you for caring and sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Good evening, caller. Okay, we lost that one. All right, our phone lines are open once again. We'll get you on right away, 313-868-0342. 313-868-0351, 313-868-4336. Oh, you should have told him, he's on Facebook. Okay, we did this one. Ronald Smith on Monte Vista wants to thank you. They had a serious drain problem over there. I mean, serious. You all cleaned it up, and he says thank you off Facebook.
Well, you're welcome. Gary Brown and the water department are doing the best job I've seen in years. They are responding to these individual cases, and I probably get a couple of calls a week, and they always get out and respond. So I'm glad to hear they were responsive on this one.
Now, Mayor, speaking of water, hold on 1 minute, caller. We know that poverty still exists, but you don't hear as much about water being shut off like we did at one time. I mean, as you know, at one time, there were thousands of people marching, the United Nations here in Detroit condemning us. You don't hear all of that anymore.
Well, I won't tell you it's perfect, but we worked really hard. You know, there used to be virtually no money to help somebody who couldn't pay their water bill, and we put in a program where we now have $4 million a year into a fund, and basically it's Detroiters. I mean, people are paying to help their neighbors who are less well off, but if you're below the poverty level, the average water bill in the city is about $75 a week. We'll pay $25 a week towards your bill. If you've got an arrearage, we'll freeze that arrearage and pay it off for you if you keep making your payments. If you've got a leak in your house which caused the bill, we'll do up to $1,000 in repairs so that it doesn't happen again. There was a time we had 80,000 people who were eligible for shutoffs. We're down to about 2,000 now. I'm going to keep working at this till we get to zero, but anybody who is having trouble paying your bill, call DWSD, come into our service centers, because there is help available. And those who are in extreme poverty and can't even afford the $50 a week, there are programs there with Wayne Metro and some others. So we've worked really hard at it. I won't tell you that the problem is 100% solved, but we're going to keep working at it until it is.
And you, the city does not just want to cut people's water off. If you're having trouble, if you're in dire straits or health or what, you've got to take the initiative and call.
You do. I mean, we can't help if you don't call. But you know, our service centers that we have in the 3 areas of the city, there was a time when there were lines out the door. I was
around the corner.
I was by them last week, and there's 3 or 4 people inside. So we're making some progress, but that doesn't mean there aren't people out there who don't need help. So if you know somebody who's below the poverty level, having trouble with their water bill, tell them, call DWSD, and they can get put into a plan where they get some help.
All right, let's go to our phone lines. Good evening, caller. You're speaking with Mayor Mike Duggan.
Good evening to both of you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. I live in the southwest area, 48217. Nothing is being done in this area. I heard the mayor the other day talking about southwest Detroit in the Mexican town. There you have over 26 schools. It's devoted to the Latino area. You might have maybe 5% other nationalities. These schools are great. They're not closing. We have only 2 schools over here, which one is a charter school and the other is a public school. What can we do over in this area to get more activity for our children and our seniors and families?
So what? Give me what streets are you by?
We're between Schaefer and Outer Drive.
Okay. So are you far from the Kemeny Center?
Yeah, I know the Kennedy Center is coming up. It's been over 3 years, and the swimming pool was taken away from there.
Okay,
Our
but
kids need to swim.
so when you
don't need to go
so,
2 or 3 or 4 blocks down
for our kids to learn to swim in the summer. We need activity here.
Okay. So when you say nothing is being done, let's just talk about the different pieces. That was the first area of the city where we went through with the board-up brigades and boarded up the vacant houses that we haven't gotten to yet on demolition. At the Kemeny site, we rebuilt the baseball fields, the soccer fields, the playground equipment, and we are now building an expansion to that rec center with new basketball courts that's being done right now and is going to open this year. I can't, I don't run the schools and I don't want to run the schools, but as far as which schools are open and closed, that's something that's going to have to be addressed by DPS. But I've spent a lot of time on that Kemeny project. I've been out there many times, and it's one of the main areas of investment for youth recreation anywhere in the city.
I understand that, but you've taken away a swimming pool.
When you say I've taken away, these rec centers have been closed for years, and we're trying to rebuild what we can.
There was a swimming pool in there, and it's not there anymore. So I don't know who took it away, but we need the swimming pool. We need the same thing that the schools at Western International has. We need the same thing as their parks over there. Our kids need the same activities.
We need to get Dr. Vitti here. That's
You can talk about that, but I can tell you that there are many areas of the city that would love to have the investment that we are putting into Kemeny right now. So I won't tell you that we're going to build everything everybody wants everywhere, but what we have already done on those outdoor fields and what we are doing on the expansion of that recreation center, again, you said we haven't done anything. You can say we aren't doing enough, and you may be right, but we're making an effort, and I've been there several times. I've watched the progress of the project.
All I say is just make it even. If you can make it even, that's a bigger deal. Make it even. Thank you.
Okay.
all right. Thank you. Got another call there? Good evening, caller. You speak with Mayor Mike Duggan.
Hello, Mayor. I would like to know, are you doing anything for the homeless?
With
Well, who?
For the homeless people?
Oh, what are you doing
homeless.
for the homeless?
Yeah, we have changed the whole philosophy of how we've been dealing with the homeless population. So I brought in all of the agencies serving the homeless community, from the people doing prevention to the people who are doing short-term shelters, to those doing outreach, to those doing mental health services and the like. And every year there'd be a so-called point-in-time count where folks go out in January all across the city and count the number of homeless. And every year the number would be the same. I'd say, you know what, we need a strategy to reduce the homeless. And the fact is, we were recycling people through shelters, which is okay to get folks out of the cold for the night, but if you put them back out at 8 o'clock the next morning, you're not solving the problem. The national policy has been to what they call permanent supportive housing, that you get the homeless not just out for the night, but put folks in a place where they can be for the long term, where if you've got addiction issues, you've got help with your addiction issues. You've got mental health issues, you've got mental health services. You want to find a job, you can get those kinds of skills. We opened one at the Paquette Center in the Midtown area. Then we opened a second one on Charlotte, actually not far from Little Caesars Arena. And we just broke ground on one right next to Reverend Holly's church over by Little Rock off of Woodward. And the interesting thing was that I think it's 36 units they're building right now, but one of the women who had been homeless and moved into the Charlotte facility has now been hired by the agency, and she's working full-time, leasing out the apartments in the new building. We also just have another one being started with cots. And so we are moving very aggressively to permanent supportive housing. The last point in time count said we were down from 2,500 to 2,000. But I do believe the solution is get people into permanent housing with support, and that's the direction we're heading.
Hold on 1 minute, ma'am. Speaking of that, libertarian candidate or something I heard a couple days ago wants to give homeless people guns. I want to ask you about that.
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you.
Okay, you got
what
folks
do you
who
think
want to
about,
arm everybody.
Yeah, giving homeless people guns. Also from Facebook. What about teachers with guns? And what's your position on assault weapons?
Well, it's pretty much the same on everything. Number one, I don't know that arming teachers is my idea of a solution. I don't know if you saw a story today. 3 kids were injured at a school somewhere in the South with the teacher in the classroom who shot off the gun accidentally. I think the downside to that is worse. And you think about this, you had down at Parkland a sheriff's deputy on site armed who didn't even go in to the building. So I think the issues are far more complicated than saying let's arm the teachers or let's arm individuals. So we have a lot of things we have to do in this community to deal with the violence, and I'm not sure that more guns is the answer.
May I say this?
Go ahead, ma'am.
May I say this, and not being funny, sir? Until we can solve some of our racial hatred for one another, we are not going to solve any issue by passing out more guns.
Amen.
Okay?
I can't argue with you.
That is not the answer.
And let me say this, if I could, real quickly. You know, our racial problems, our economic disparity, income inequality problems are almost, it seems, sewn into the fabric of our nation, and so we have more to accomplish to where it is a constitution and a nation that is actually for everyone, which includes people of color, it includes women, it includes the underserved. So I'm feeling you, but this is something we all gotta work on. He can't do it, I can't do it, you can't do it, but together we can.
Well, as long as we are continuously watching the guilty walk away free from outright murdering someone because of their skin color, we are always going to have an issue of trust.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we're going to keep working at it.
And until you hold those accountable, period, that they can go to jail just like everyone else for murder, flat out murder, on the air, across the internet, all over the world looking at you, you will have a serious problem.
I agree. I think all murderers should be off the streets. They should be brought to justice, all. And I'm going to tell you something.
Uniform,
I don't want to be murdered or have any of my family or anybody murdered, whether if the murderer is wearing a police uniform or if the murderer is just wearing this uniform right here. Murder is wrong. To kill somebody, to take something from someone, to rape somebody, putting out grandmothers who are simply trying to take their grandkids to school, stealing their car at gunpoint. All of this is wrong, and it should be condemned by all of us universally. I am not happy if the criminal is black. I'm going to cry if they're black. I'm going to cry if they're white. But I'm going to do something, and I think that we all should.
We have to have equality for all and
yes,
justice.
ma'am. Well, let's
and
vote.
If we do not, we are not going to get anywhere.
I agree. Well, we got to go to the polls. That's one thing we got to do. Okay, my sister?
Have a good day.
You too. Thank you for watching. Good evening, caller. You speaking with Mayor Mike Duggan.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm
Good evening.
enjoying your program.
Thank you.
I have a few questions to ask.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
One of those is transparency. That is the problem that I have with the city and with the state and with the federal government. It's transparency. I think that if there had been a transparent rules, there would be less foreclosures. If many people knew that they were able to get a poverty exemption, if they were able to know that they were able to get whatever, if it's not publicized, people don't know it, and then 1 year passes and you're no longer able to benefit by that rule. One other thing I'd like to ask is I'd like a scheduling with the mayor. Now, I have sent, emailed that I'd like to schedule with the mayor, but I have received no response.
What's the subject you'd like to talk about?
My property that's in foreclosure.
Okay. So if
And
you,
I believe that because the properties have not been assessed properly for 30 years, that I no longer owe any property taxes.
okay.
I feel that if an accountant went back and looked at the property taxes that I have paid already, that I would owe nothing.
So there is a process to do that, and it goes on every year, which is we have an assessor's hearing. It's extremely well
Yes,
notified.
Let me say this. I understand that. I have been through that. I have gone down and they assessed the property this year. I'm assuming, because there's no transparency in government, that if I go down and have my property taxes reduced, that the next year it's going to be the same rate. But no, it increases, and I need to go back the next year. Now, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that there were poverty guidelines. I didn't understand that because it's not been conveyed to the public. If it had been conveyed to the public as it should have been, there would be many less foreclosures.
Okay.
That
Well,
is
there are many less foreclosures, and not only, and I won't tell you that every year everything has been conveyed, but we are sending out huge number of notices. The treasurer, Eric Sabri, is constantly in the media saying, here's what we do, and we actually are coordinating volunteers who are knocking on the door of everybody facing foreclosure because people throw the notices out and don't read them, and we are doing the outreach.
Mayor, excuse me. I don't throw the notices out. I go to every forum and somebody tells me, no, there's nothing that you can do about this but there is something that I can do about it.
Ma'am, can I suggest, why don't you, the mayor has
schedule
two,
an appointment to
he
see
has
the mayor.
two, ma'am, this is how this thing works. The mayor has two of his aides here. Now, I'm going to give you my number. If you call tomorrow and say, I'm the lady called about foreclosure, I'm going to give these two fine gentlemen, Marshall Bullock and Ernest Johnson. Ernest Johnson, my longtime friend, Shrines of the Black Madonna Community Coalition.
You know,
and,
I respect
and Marshall Bullock, I want y'all to remember that name. I will give them your number.
I understand what you're saying. What I want to say is this. I respect you, and
Thank you.
respect the mayor.
Thank you.
I voted for the mayor.
Thank you.
The only thing that I'm saying is that you don't listen to the people. When people have been here 30 years, paid their property taxes that were been outrageous for 30 years, and then all of a sudden you come along and say, well, your husband died, and now you're not in the same position that you were in 30 years ago. So now what we're going to do is give you a loan on your property that's paid for at 18%. No.
Okay. I changed that law, and I got it reduced from 18%. It was the state of Michigan that required 18%. I went to Lansing in December of 2014 and got the law changed that allowed Treasurer Sabri to structure 4- and 5-year loans at 6%. This is something I've been working on every day for the last 4 years. So I disagree with your assessment that we don't listen. I've spent a lot of time at it. I get people out knocking on doors right now. Ernie Johnson will follow up on your...
And I believe that you have done what you could do.
Okay, well, ma'am...
However, what I'm saying is that what you have done has not relieved the citizens of Detroit.
It hasn't relieved you. It has helped many citizens, but it has not helped all. And
It has helped a few.
Ma'am,
it has helped a few citizens.
Okay, well, then that's what you call a good start. Now, but not an ending. Now, I'm gonna give you my number. Please call tomorrow. The mayor just said, give your number. I'm gonna give your number and name to Ernest Johnson, and he will call you tomorrow. You call me.
I want a meeting with the mayor.
Ma'am.
I don't want a meeting with anybody else.
I'm going to be as honest with you as I can. I cannot break the law. The foreclosure process is set by state statute.
I want you to listen.
Okay.
All right, Elder.
Okay.
Ma'am, with all due respect, we have listened and we have offered to try to help you. Now, you are my elder. I believe you're my elder, and you're his. Either way, you're a woman, and automatically as a woman, and I come from a woman, you deserve respect, and so we respect you. But we have offered you.
I hope to respect you.
We have offered you. Now, my number.
What number do you want me to call?
Thank you.
And then I'm going to talk to somebody that's going to tell me, we can't do that.
Ma'am.
I think based on what you're saying, that's probably true. We can't break the law, and I think that's what you're frustrated with. Is
I want you. Let's say.
I need to give you the number, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, 313-646-3375. 313-646-3375. Call tomorrow, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, caller. You speaking with Mayor Mike Duggan.
Yes. I just wanted to basically ask a quick question. So why would you knock down a sturdy recreation center?
What are you talking about?
The Johnson Rec?
No, we're not knocking down Johnson. So what recreation center are you talking about?
Somebody said that.
Said that the city's going to knock down the Johnson?
Marshall Bullock was at a meeting yesterday.
We're knocking down Johnson?
Somebody did say that.
Okay, my understanding is that we're close to an agreement to get Johnson renovated. If there's discussion of knocking down Johnson, I have not heard that.
Okay, so if the renovation don't go through, you're going to knock it down?
Well,
that your administration.
I don't know what will happen, but that recreation center has been closed for like a decade and has deteriorated. So we think we have a partnership with UAD High School that can get it saved. And I have to tell you, I have not been updated in the last month. The last I heard, that was coming together and the rec center was going to be preserved. So if there's been a new development that's being knocked down, I have not heard that.
But next month, when the mayor comes back, can we have an update on the okay? His his staff said,
But is the UAD thing not going forward?
Kim has it all worked. She explained it yesterday, and they were opposed to it being bought by you.
Oh, well, okay. But there is no plan to knock it down that I'm aware of.
okay. So, and we'll have some info next month.
The community not gonna be happy about that if that does happen.
It's not
We're gonna let you know that.
Okay, well, so here is the situation that we've been dealing with across the city. Is rec centers were closed across the city about 10 years ago. Mitch Album came to us, and I tried to convince him. He said he would rebuild the rec center. I tried to convince him to rebuild Johnson. He went in there and said it was so far gone, there's nothing he could do. He went over to 7 Mile and Van Dyke. They renovated the Lipke Rec Center, which they're operating out of, which is great, which led us to believe there was no hope. UAD High School has come along and said,
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Hold on, sister. Sister,
I'm
sister.
listening.
Hold on, let the mayor finish what he said, then you come back. Go ahead, man.
And UAD High School said, we will put the money in to renovate that rec center, which was probably thought to be beyond saving. And I know that Kim Tandy, the district manager, has been trying to work something out where UAD would renovate that center and there would be some community access. So I don't know where it stands today. If that deal doesn't go through, there probably is no future for that center. That's true. It's in terrible shape. But the last I heard, we were working on it. But this is probably the last hope for that center.
So we
you're not open for other proposals.
I have been open for other proposals, as I've said to everybody, for the last 4 years. Bring me a real proposal with funding. And in 4 years, nobody has come forward with a real proposal with funding. Everybody who has gone in there, when they see how much it costs to renovate and fix up, because we've had a lot of damage over the years, says you can't do it. So for 4 years, we've been entertaining proposals. We worked out Tyndall, not very far away, where another private group funded by the UAW came in. And so no one has come forward. Once they have gone through Johnson and seen how much it costs to renovate, no one has come forward with a proposal in 4 years except UAD High School. So I have to deal with reality as it is. And a lot of times it's not telling people everything that you want to hear. But the reality on this is that this is the last chance to save that rec center.
So if this proposal doesn't go through, then that center will be knocked down.
I don't know what else would happen to it.
Okay, my sister, you done?
All I'm going to say is that the community is not going to be happy with that. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, let's work with UAD. Let's see what we need to do to make it go through.
Actually, UAD, what I heard was UAD wanted to have the community to basically operate it, but they want to basically take over everywhere else. They want the field. They want the outside. They basically want the land. This is basically a land grab. I'm not good with this. This is what I look at it as being.
Yeah. So the difference is
that land, that area has, if you know what I'm talking about, that area.
Now, I'm very familiar with it. This is one of the things that we have to face as a city. This city went into bankruptcy because the elected officials didn't have the courage to say, we can't afford that. They spent money they didn't have. They borrowed until they couldn't pay the bills. And so we've come back, and rec centers that have been closed for 10 years that are deteriorating, on every one of them I've said this. We ran this summer after school rec programs in 16 high schools. So we provided activities all summer long that didn't require us to build $10 million rec centers that we just honestly don't have the money to do. And what I said to the communities was, in areas where they have been closed for years, in the Brewster site, at the Lipke site, at the Tyndall site, at the Johnson site, if anybody wants to come forward with a proposal, we'll entertain it. But the city is not in a position to take rec centers that have been allowed to deteriorate for 10 years and operate. That's just the truth. And so one at a time, we have put together partnerships. So if you look at what Mitch Albom did at Lipke, he rebuilt the soccer field, the football field, the baseball field, and they're working in partnership with the community. So there's times when the football team that plays out of Lipke has the football field, at other times the community can use it. At times when the baseball team that plays out of there has a field, there's other times the community uses it. And this is, I just have to tell you, this is the truth of how we're going to have to operate is on partnerships. And I know that isn't what you would like, but honestly, that's what the city has to do.
All right, my sister, we're going to try to give you an update next month, okay? And you keep us abreast, okay? Is she gone? Okay. Good evening, caller. You speak with Mayor Mike Duggan.
Hello?
Good evening.
You hear me?
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen. My question to the mayor is, why is it handicap parking being enforced in Detroit like it is in Southfield? I mean, because everywhere you go, people are parking in handicap spots at dollar stores, family dollar stores, grocery markets, pharmacies. And I get tired of walking from the back of the parking lot to make it to the store because I'm disabled.
You know, that's a good question, although I usually get complaints that are just the opposite. Why are our parking officers so aggressive with the tickets and the boots? Is there a particular store or area where you feel like they're not enforcing?
It's like everywhere I go. You know, able-bodied people are parking in handicap spots.
So
they just don't care.
Do you have anything in specifics?
Yeah,
though?
I can direct the officers to give special attention to a particular store or area.
I'm from the west side, the entire west side.
So,
is there a particular street, business, certain street?
It's like Grand River, Greenfield, Finkel.
Okay.
You know,
You talking about them shopping complexes and stuff?
Right.
Shopping complexes, drugstores, Family Dollars, restaurants.
Okay.
I see it every day.
You know, I had not heard that before that, but that's why I do this show. So I will talk to the traffic, the parking control officers, and ask them to pay special attention to that, and let's see if we can't do a better job of that.
And the mayor's people are writing that information down. Call back next month. Let us know how we're doing.
Great.
Yeah, thank you very much for the call.
Thank you.
Well,
Bye-bye. Got another call. Oh, and family, I want to let you know the Teachers Lounge is here. The mighty, mighty Teachers Lounge. Leslie and her great, awesome team. Our public school teachers who participate in union activities and go above and beyond at school for our children. Because like Brother Malcolm said, if it's not about the children, what the heck, well, he said hell, what the hell is it all about? So the Teachers Lounge is here. Live show every Thursday. They're here, 8 p.m. on the Get Up Stand Up Show. Good evening, caller. You speak with Mayor Mike Duggan.
Mayor, I'm calling about zip code 48227, houses that need to be actually torn down. It is inconceivable that they would tear houses down in the 48235 zip code that are actually beautiful 3- and 4-bedroom homes, and that they would come in and tear down a beautiful structure that's rehabable instead of going into an area that the house is half tipping over or burnt out and not tear them down in the 48227 area.
So I don't know exactly where the boundaries are offhand, but let me start with this. I don't believe we are tearing down salvageable houses. We have pulled 5,000 houses from the inventory. out of the demolition queue because we do inspections on every one. We auction 3 every single day, and anytime we schedule a house for demolition and the neighborhood group calls us and says, I think that house can be saved, we go out and do a second inspection. In fact, the calls I get are much more frequently the other way. We have preserved a house because we think we can save it, and the neighbors come and say, no, you can't. Take a look. But we have to demolish in zones that are approved by the federal government. And so the first year I was here, we were demolishing basically in all the areas of the city that were 90% or more occupied. Then I got the feds to expand it, and now I've gotten them to expand it to again. So about 2/3 of the city right now is in the federally approved demolition zones. And if we get more federal money, we'll expand it again. But we are demolishing in the federally approved zones. And if you know of a particular house that's scheduled for demolition that you think can be saved, just call my office and give us the address, and we'll re-inspect it because we are trying very hard to preserve every house we can.
Okay. One last question.
You got that office number?
Oh, yes. Do you have anything that you can tell me that you are doing for the public schools in Detroit? Are any new ones being built?
So again, the mayor does not run the public schools. And really in this last year, after a decade, we finally returned control of the schools to the elected school board. I think the school board president, Iris Taylor, and Dr. Vitti are doing an excellent job. And I don't know when you have school board representatives on here, but they would be the right people to address that question to.
Thank you. I will, because I really want to find out how much lottery money is going to the Detroit School District.
You and me both.
Okay.
We all want to know. Okay.
Yes, we do.
Thank you,
very
ma'am.
much.
All right. 2 more calls. Okay, callers, I need you to be precise, polite, and to the point. Once again, the Teachers Lounge, the mighty, mighty Teachers Lounge. They're in the bullpen, throwing that ball at 90 miles an hour. Boy, you know the Tigers could have used y'all. Good evening, caller.
Good evening.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'd just like to ask the mayor. I went down on Woodward downtown, and I know how clean the streets were. Well, when I come back into the neighborhood, our neighborhoods are filthy. They're dirty. So when are we going to get these neighborhoods cleaned up? They're dirty from the east side, from the west side.
So
you go down 7 Mile, you go down Hayes, you go down Gratiot, and they're terrible. And when we go downtown, you don't see a piece of paper anywhere.
So downtown, the downtown businesses voted themselves an extra tax assessment, and the cleaning is done by the Downtown Business Partnership out of that tax. Last year, for the first time in many, many years, we put street sweepers back on the road, and they went through and did 3 or 4 cleanings. I'm not sure when the first cleaning is scheduled. We got to get through the snow melting before we do it. Do you guys happen to know when the first streets? It'll be sometime in the next month or so. But I think people saw last year the street sweepers were out pretty regularly. And when they post the notices, I would really encourage folks, if you can, when they put the notice off, if you can get your cars off the street. The cleaning is far more thorough when the cars are off the street. But the street sweeping is every street in this city 3 or 4 times a year.
All right, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, caller. You speak with Mayor Mike. Real quick, please.
How you doing today?
Good evening.
How you doing today, Mayor?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm okay. First, I got to give a shout out to TV33, Mr. R.J. Watkins, Henry Tyler, get well, Miss Colette Ramsey, Miss Perryman, Miss Billy Jones, Miss Moneymaking Diva, the hair doctor. This is DJ Marvel International Hip Hop. This is the first time I've talked to you, Mr. Duggan. So thank you for being the mayor of our city.
Oh, well, thank you.
I do want to say that. Thank you. I will say this. By me being a generational resident, during your speech, you talked about us. I'm the individual that generated that mindset because I used to live outside the city of Detroit, and I moved back based on being here. So I want to say thank you that you did acknowledge the residents that have been here 20 years or more, raised kids, paid taxes, and or about having business in our community. So I do want to thank you in your speech that you acknowledged us, okay?
Well,
Seriously.
well, welcome back, and tell your other friends who left. It's a good time to return.
Well, I've been here 20 years. It's just the point that there's a lot of people who grew up in our community, got education in other places, or got money to live in other cities. They left and never came back.
Right.
So you look for good, you find good. You look for bad, you find bad. So one, thank you on acknowledging the generational residents. And two, the first thing that you did when you became mayor was fix the lights.
Right.
I want to thank you. Okay? Now, when it comes down to other issues, I would like to know if it's possible that if it's an abandoned recreational center in the city of Detroit, can we just get it to the point that residents of the city of Detroit can actually play basketball at a full court with city sponsorship, outside city sponsorship, at one of the abandoned recreation centers? Because that is one thing that will help many residents that we have a city sponsor and or public sponsor place where people can go play basketball. So I'm going to put that in the air, and I'm not going to take up too much of your time, Minister Malik Shabazz, but I do want to thank you that you have given people the opportunity to city of Detroit to talk to our mayor.
He's here once, and I want you to know he's here once a month, and he didn't just start. We started this a long time ago before he was mayor.
Before he became mayor.
And I want to his credit, that he has been coming here to WHPR before he was mayor and has kept his commitment to continue to come back to talk to you, to address your concerns.
So let me answer the question, though, as far as access to recreation and basketball courts. So the city of Detroit closed 16 rec centers basically 10 to 15 years ago in a relatively short period of time.
I remember.
And most of them, right, most of them were so deteriorated they couldn't be restored. If we had tried to rebuild them, it would have been $160 million, and we didn't have it. So instead, I went to Dr. Taylor, the president of the school board, and Dr. Vitti, and I said, look, we don't have the money to build all these rec centers, but you have these schools that have gymnasiums, that have recreation space that are already here. And last summer, we paid for security and play leaders, and all summer long, opened 16 additional schools that were used across the city. Then Alexis Wiley's heading this up. She says, let's continue it on an after-school basis. And so we've got 8 or 10 right now that we are paying to keep open.
Because you're putting your efforts back in our community. Give me access to an abandoned elementary school, and I can take it from there.
All right.
All right.
Well, we own a few of those.
He said they own a few of them.
We could make you a deal.
Yes, sir. Y'all have an amazing day. One of the famous coach from Miss Colette Ramsey. And I appreciate both of y'all. Have a great night.
Thank you for the call.
Tell Colette hi. She does such a wonderful job in the mornings here at WHPR. Thank you, my brother. One last call real quick. Good evening, caller. You're the last caller.
You snuck this into a 90-minute segment. You know that.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor, I have a question, if this is possible. So that we feel included with everything that's going on, especially downtown, why can't the people that's coming in, that's buying, opening business and stuff, adopt at least 3 neighborhoods and rehabilitate them, which would make us feel like we're a part of this too?
Well, what you have is the businesses coming in are paying a significant amount in taxes, and if you heard the State of the City speech, we've got $65 million more in strategic neighborhood funds going into 8 neighborhoods. We've got $80 million in streetscape improvements to improve the commercial corridors, what we would think of as the shops that we would walk up to when I was a kid in the city. And so there's a huge amount of investment going in, but the way it works is folks come back, we collect the income taxes, and we put that back into services. And we're going to just keep going as fast as we can.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, we're out of time, but the mayor will be back next week. Mayor, we didn't even get
next month.
Next month,
Thank you.
Yeah, to talk about the state of the city and what you did and how you did it differently and how you were highlighting the schools, but not a power grab, as some of your critics say, but trying to bring the public schools and the charter and the private together, at least as and to make sure our children are safe getting to and from school.
Well, it's interesting, and there's been a coalition of about 150 community leaders who came out with a proposal and asked me to act on this. And so the issue really is this: 32,000 children woke up this morning in the city of Detroit and went to school in the suburbs.
That's deep.
We have 100 DPS schools and 100 charter schools, and yet 32,000 families felt that they didn't have good enough choice. And so I brought most of the charter operators in, Dr. Taylor, Dr. Vitti, Alicia Merriweather, DPS group. I brought them all into a room. We spent a couple hours. And I said, you've been fighting with each other long enough. And while you're fighting with each other, 30,000 people are leaving the city. How about we work together? And we combine our bus transportation so people can get around and have choices between you. How about we collaborate on after-school programs? So maybe whether you go to a charter school or a public school on the Northwest side, we have a single after-school program you run at the Northwest Activity Center. And we're looking to roll this all out in the fall. The response was great. The DPS and charter leadership said it's time we bring these children back into the city of Detroit. So I'm not talking about running the schools. I'm talking about facilitating transportation so that DPS and the charters can keep Detroit children in the city.
You know, we're out of time, Mayor. I want to thank you for coming. We look forward to having you again next month as always. But I want to tell you something. I never was prouder of you than this morning when you said, I'm going after the 32,000 children who leave Detroit every day for school. I want them to go to school in Detroit. Now, the parents can choose public or charter or whatever, but I want them to go. They live in Detroit. I want them to go to school here. That is admirable, and I think we can all and should all support you in that effort.
Almost all.
Almost all. Well, you got me.
All right.
All right, family, we're out of time. Mayor Mike Duggan will be back next week. Oh, Mayor, next month, excuse me, for the wife.
All right.
First Lady Lori, some soap from the African.
Lori always watches to see what you're going to send home with me.
Well, she got some, and she was at the State of the City. Yeah. I just want to say that for the record, for those, because that's another lie. But
What's
anyway,
that?
the Mighty Mighty Teachers Lounge is next, so do not turn from this dial. I'm Malik Shabazz. Get up, stand up. Have peace, y'all. Detroit love in action. Thank you, man.
You're watching W33BY, Detroit, Highland Park, Michigan. The views and opinions expressed on the following show are not necessarily the views and opinions of W33BY, its affiliates, management, or sponsors.